Belonging at Wharton conversation series, where we will discuss how our MBA young alumni have built a sense of belonging here at Wharton. My name is Quentin MacArthur. I'm the Senior Associate Director for Diversity in the MBA Admissions Office here at the Wharton School. Today, I'll be serving as the moderator for this discussion. At Wharton, it is our hope that all members of our community feel seen and empowered to contribute their best selves so that they can actualize their academic, professional, and personal goals while at Wharton. This sense of belonging to a greater community, we know that it improves motivation, health, and happiness. And we also know that to build a sense of belonging requires active effort and practice. So today, we'll be talking to young Black Wharton alumni about their experiences here on campus and in the workplace. So with no further ado, why don't we have our panelists introduce themselves, and maybe they can introduce themselves by last name. How about by last name in alphabetical order? So I don't know who that is first, but.
I think that would be me. Hi, I'm Mary Nadora Nugo. We're in class of 2018. I'm currently in the gaming industry, working at Activision Blizzard. So makers of Call of Duty, Candy Crush, World of Warcraft, Diablo. So if you know those games, this is Hearthstone in my background. At Wharton, I was a Student Life Fellow, Admissions Fellow. I was also part of the AMBA Association, WASA. I actually helped with the conferences, and I was also part of several clubs that we're in. So that's about it.
Thank you, Marianne.
All right. Hello, everybody. Name is Marcus Johnson. I went to the Naval Academy, spent 7 years in the military before business school at Wharton. Graduated in the class of 2019. I'm currently at Amazon in the e-commerce space, looking kind of like wiggle my way over more towards the financial services or fintech element of Amazon. See, while at Wharton, I was involved heavily within AMBA. I was an admissions fellow, heavily involved within the Veterans Club, and I like to just think, there was a club I was going to poke my head in there and just get to know my classmates. And that's, I guess, me in a nutshell. I look forward to having this dialogue with you all today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nagli. I am a recent 2020 grad, so first COVID class. Our fourth quarter was quite relaxing and uneventful. But I'm from Queens. Before Wharton, I worked at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, working on performance improvement work and improving the patient experience. So healthcare background, and post-Wharton, I'm working at McKinsey as an associate, and I focus primarily on healthcare projects. While at Wharton, living my best life for 2 years as I look back, I was a member of AMBA. I did dance studio, and I'm trying to think of what else I did. I should have written this up. I met a lot of great people and solidified that Wharton was the best choice for me. And I'll end there.
Thanks, Magali.
Hi, everyone. John Okenwa here, Wharton class of 2019. Currently an associate at McKinsey out of the DC office, where I focus on people and organizational performance. Prior to Wharton, I sort of dabbled around industries, financial services, tech startups. And then at Wharton, I think I got into a number of stuff. So I did a dual degree and only had 3 semesters at Wharton, actually. But in that time, I was a part of AMBA, WASA, also led some Africa treks, which I found really fun. Also did like Wharton Africa Group Partners, which was focused on just finding investment opportunities in the African continent. Really great time and excited to be here with all of you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ben Nalukube. I'm Wharton 20 in Maggie's class. I currently live in Houston, Texas. director for DaVita, working in healthcare operations. So if you're not familiar, DaVita was one of the top dialysis providers. And so I really enjoyed my time at Wharton. Similarly to Maggie, was a part of a number of clubs. Specifically, I was a student life fellow. I was on the executive board of our Wharton Graduate Association. I was president of my cluster. I was part of the AMBA Marketing Club and a whole other activities. And so it's super excited to be with you all this evening. And hopefully we'll get to answer a number of your questions and talk to you about my experience at Wharton.
Okay, wonderful. So we have a quite diverse panel assembled today, and we're excited to hear from all of them. So maybe the best place to start is just to level set on what is belongingness and why is it important, or why was it important for you at Wharton?
I'll jump in there. But what is belongingness? For me, belongingness is like the sense that you can be your authentic self in whatever environment that you fit in there. So like that means like you don't have to camouflage who you are. You don't have to cut back on your laughing. You know, it's just like you can be who you are unabashedly. But I also think of a belongingness as like a double-edged sword as well. So not only do I expect that I can be, you know, accepted in other communities, I need to make sure that I accept others into like, you know, my community or, you know, wherever I find myself in. So to me, like belongingness is like something that's very important, and you'll see throughout today's conversation how this like really permeates throughout the Wharton experience.
Absolutely. I think to add to that, the way I sort of think about belongingness is it's the third step beyond diversity, right? So the analogy that I have in my head is diversity is like inviting someone to your party. Inclusion is going a step further to say, hey, join me on the dance floor. And then belongingness is making folks feel so invited and comfortable to the point where they are like inviting other guests to the dance floor, right? So if you think about it in that sense, in my mind, belongingness is really getting to the place where you feel like an integral part of the community and going beyond just being existing in that environment to actually attracting other folks because you're energized and super excited to be part of that community. So.
Yeah. So Marcus and John really hit the nail on the head in terms of the definition. So I'm not going to speak too much more on that. In terms of why it's actually important, or at least it was important to me at Wharton, was really around.
Sorry.
So it's really around, you know, the fact that the 2 years is not just about, you know, who you get to meet and what you get to explore, but also sort of like a brand, like the Wharton brand was a brand that you actually extend beyond the 2 years. And so it's really important to be in a space where you can kind of connect with different people and really explore like different things and taste. So like some of the things that I was able to do at Wharton was also join the MENA Club. And I felt that being in spaces where not only are you exploring like things you can do with AMBA and WASA, you can actually find some connection to other clubs and events as well. And some of my friends from some of the other clubs are actually lifelong friends that I keep here and now. So I think that's why it's really important when you think about where you're going to spend the next 2 years, it actually goes beyond those 2 years.
Marianne, that was a wonderful, all of our panelists, wonderful answers. And for those of you who are new to the Wharton community, one of the things you'll learn about us is that we operate in abbreviations. And so AMBA is our African American MBA Association. WASA is the Wharton Association, Wharton African Student Association. Sorry about that. And then MENA is the Middle East and North Africa Club here at Wharton. So wonderful indeed. So let's continue down this thread, and I'd like to know, in what spaces have you felt a deep sense of belonging in the Wharton community?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in on that one. I think so. The way I'll start by answering this question is by saying that I think it takes time. Um, well, everyone runs differently when you get to Wharton and in your place, finding your space. I think to append to the belonging definition in the context of Wharton, it's not only just welcomed and feeling like you can do your thing in that space. It's also the kind of the permission to grow in that space. To Marianne's point of exploring, because you should use those 2 years to stretch and grow and to do different things. And in some ways, you need the encouragement. Some people need the permission. Some people need the encouragement. Some people just need the push to really change. And knowing that you'll be accepted as you come out on the other side of that change is really important. So to that end, everybody runs that race a little differently, and you'll find that some people have found and leaned into an area early in their first year. Others, it takes until their second. So for me, AMBA really helps to put roots with the programming that they do. That was a big part of my community. And I think because it was such a big and early part, it allows you to kind of jump off into the deep end and explore and know that you can always come back home. So that was a big refuge for me. And then I think as I grew into my second year, I really found a strong community as a student life fellow and as part of the graduate association, working with my other fellow executives. We still have quarterly today. We still, talk each other through different opportunities and stressors of work and what they should think about next. And so I think, again, to Marianne's point, right, you're an alumni much longer than you are a student. So really using that time to find where you belong and exploring those connections will translate into dividends beyond your 2 years there.
So I'll just add on to that. In addition to AMBA, I found solace in WASA, for the Wharton African Student Association, and Caribiz, which is the Caribbean Business Student Association. So I'm Haitian, and coming into Wharton, I actually was an undergrad at Penn, and the experience was quite different. I was in the engineering school, and I very much was always cognizant that I was like a Black female at Penn. And I had the opposite experience at Wharton. And it wasn't just AMBA, WASA, and Caribiz that helped me. I think it was just the presence of people that look like me. And it was sort of like the acknowledgement of Wharton that we were important and we had a space too, whether it was to express ourselves, collaborate, like wear our ethnic garb on like International Day or the different weeks that we held. And I think that the community not only provided like academic support because you need that, but it was more so a family where you were able to be vulnerable. And I think that I didn't realize how much I appreciated that until my second year when I was re-recruiting for consulting, because I was able to have like conversations where I was reflecting on not only things I struggled with, but then found people within the community that were equally vulnerable and spoke to me about what they struggled with or how they sort of tackled dealing with their insecurities or challenges or whatever they were facing. And I think it's like a really special thing, and I'm not going to toot Wharton's horn too much, but I think there's a reason that we all came back and from 2018 all the way through last year, and are spending this time with you guys to really push forward the point that like Wharton does an excellent job at allowing you to bring your full self in whatever way that looks like, whether you're depressed because you're recruiting, whether you're like super nervous about your test, whether you're trying to like, have fun and party on a Friday, like there's belonging for everyone. And the other thing I'll add, because we don't want to talk too much, is that there's a lot of cross collaboration across student groups too. So it's not this feeling where it's like, oh, you're Black or oh, you're MENA, like you can only hang with that group. We do a lot of like collaboration that fosters, like just mixing and mingling of culture and ideas, which I really appreciated as well.
Yeah, I think to add to Maggie's points very quickly, I have two experiences that I remember very vividly that made me feel very welcomed at Wharton. So the first was, as I was applying to schools, I reached out to a bunch of folks on LinkedIn, and of the several schools that I reached out to, it was recurring that there was this sense of Wharton folks being super responsive. I even remember an instance where someone was like super keen to say, hey, here's my WhatsApp number, like text me, let me get your essays, let me take a look. And for me, that was so welcoming that I was like, you know what, that is the community I want to be a part of. The second story is so like this diversity day or like initiative that a bunch of like top schools run. So I remember going to a bunch of these, and for several of the other schools, especially when it like was for minorities, the food options just didn't feel like there was any intentionality around it. I kid you not, it sounds funny, but like I kept seeing like crackers and like cheese, and I'm like this is definitely not like having me in mind, right? I show up at Wharton's Diversity Day, and then I see everything that like, you would think of for like someone like me could eat, right? And for me, something as little as that, it's like, okay, you have the chicken, okay, you have the salmon, okay, like now I can find something that I can eat, right? Honestly, that went a long way to making me feel like these guys have me top of mind, and this is a place I'll feel comfortable being in. So yeah, that was my sense of belonging.
As they say, food is love, right? So I'm glad it worked out, John. So I'm curious to know, it sounds like all of you have had the opportunity to, establish your own sense of what belonging looks like at Wharton. But I'm also curious to know if you had experiences in an academic context or even a professional context or even a personal context, quite frankly, where you've had a very strong sense of belongingness. So you were able to recognize it when you were here at Wharton. Could you talk about some of your previous experiences with belonging?
Sure, I'll jump in there. I think one of the central experiences that like still means a lot to me today is, which you haven't mentioned yet, is our learning teams. So what a learning team is, it's like your core group of maybe like 5 to 6 individuals who you'll do most of your academic curriculum for, like, I think your first semester of your first year. In my case, of my learning team, coming from the military, which has always been a very like siloed community, from the Naval Academy to submarines, we're always just like tucked away in the corner where no one ever interacts with us. Coming to like Wharton and seeing, people from other international communities, some consultants, tech people, bankers, like it was just this mashup of different personalities, experiences, backgrounds. And I immediately came in with a sense like, oh man, like I'm this like, vet who, worked hard and just got here. Like I don't belong, but my learning team like made sure that, me and the other vet on our team, Navy SEAL, that we all like belong, that we had something to add. And it's little things such as like diving into a new like group project where we're thinking about strategy and ops. And then they asked me like, what do I think about this? How would I approach this challenge? What do we think about our customer acquisition strategy? And the little questions like that, fresh out of the military, I'm like, it was a little shocking, a little bit jarring, but I respected that so much that they were open to my ideas. And, I think that set the tone for me for my remaining time at Wharton, that, like I do belong, I can contribute, I am meant to be here. And I think with that confidence gave me, I guess, the confidence to like step out even more and start to explore different communities, to put myself in positions where I just wasn't comfortable, maybe academically or socially. Because like I really view the Wharton experience as it's really a chance to like grow and learn and explore who I am as an individual, but more so who can I also be as a, classmate and friend and, future business leader.
I'll chime in on that one. So what Marcus mentioned actually did bring another experience to mind. So this was really when I was part of the Storytellers Club. So the Storytellers Club is really an organization that we're in, and it's pretty much open to everyone, where you get to share your perspectives. It's really broken down into sort of like the general Storytellers Club, where you go on a podium and there's usually a theme for the week and you kind of have a story around that. Or it's, I don't know if people have heard of Humans of New York. We actually had our own version, Humans of Wharton. And then there was also the BYOS, which is sort of like a bring your own story. So a person gets to host a dinner and you invite 5 other people, or actually they sign up for your theme. And so you come in with a story. That's pretty much why it is bring your own story. You kind of share a different perspective. So I had the chance my first year to host BYOS. That was like my first time of really getting to connect with people that were outside of like my traditional, Ambawasa clubs. And it was actually phenomenal. So I'm originally born and raised Nigerian. I went to boarding school. And I actually had someone that was part of the group who had a very similar experience in Korea. She went to boarding school. There's just so many perspectives. And it's so funny because we actually had lived in the same building, but didn't realize that there were just so many like shared experiences that we did have, even though we lived in different countries. And so that really expanded my mindset in terms of, you know, when you think beyond the surface and you think when you're thinking about commonality or spaces that you can actually like share certain things with people. And so, yeah, that was actually really phenomenal. It really made me think a lot more about authenticity and how, you know, storytelling actually does bring a little bit more substance to when you think about people's accomplishments and, you know, their experiences and their backgrounds. And then you just realize that beyond the layers at the top, sometimes there's like a stronger connection there, or, you know, at the end of the day, they're a human, right? So yeah, that was actually one key piece where I felt like, okay, this is a place where I really want to know people beyond what I see on the surface.
That's wonderful. I think oftentimes when candidates are thinking about business school, you know, some of them are, you know, really seeking out that community and that sense of belonging because they've been in experiences where they've had a community and they've been able to thrive. And in some instances, they've been able to thrive in spite of having that community. And so they're looking for that opportunity to establish a network of like-minded folks and folks that look like you, who are also ambitious, hardworking, and doing good work. So, you know, that sense of belongingness is critical. So, in your opinion, whose responsibility is it to encourage that sense of belongingness, to cultivate that sense of belongingness?
I will say that, so I think that we should gravitate towards spaces where we're empowered to amplify our voices. And when we get there, it is the responsibility of the people that are in those spaces to create a sense of belongingness, right? And I think that some of the people here had actually spoken to belongingness is not only the fact that you feel like you belong, but you allow others to feel that way. And I think that one of the vetting mechanisms that's really important, whether it's, you know, the school you choose or the company you choose to work for, is really ensuring that they do create that environment where you feel empowered to actually not just belong, but also invite other people to belong. And so I think one of the things I've usually kind of always had at the top of my mind, and Wharton has been really instrumental in helping me with that, because that really informed the company I wanted to work with after Wharton, was really feeling like they had a culture that really empowered that sense of belongingness, where you feel like you can bring your authentic self, you can share your perspectives. It's not only listened to, but it's actually welcome. And so I really think that it's the responsibility of everyone that makes up that space to cultivate that sense of belongingness.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. I think about the experience that I had at Wharton and the way that I speak about Wharton now, and it reinforces that point a whole lot, because at the end of the day, you want to get to the point where folks within that community also serve as advocates for what the experience is like. So case in point, in my case, is like when I speak to folks about Wharton, every time people say it sounds like you're recruiting for Wharton, right? But the reason I can sound that passionate about Wharton is that I truly had the conviction that I had a place while I was at Wharton. I had a fantastic experience. So yes, it is everyone's job. And at the end of the day, I think when you do a good job of attracting people and making them feel included and like they have a sense of belonging, then they reinforce that by doing the same and paying it forward. So I completely agree.
Yeah. My company, you know, when I started with them, they have this phrase that they use all the time, sometimes frustratingly, but I think it's pretty sage, and that is to aggressively get your needs met. And so I think you're invited to do that at Wharton. You know, my year when our classmates, when people in my community had qualms, you know, they weren't shy about talking with administration They weren't shy about finding those classmates who they believed could amplify their voices to administration to get those needs met, to at least be heard. That was never, that was never frowned upon. People expressed all sorts of different opinions and took their thoughts upward. And I think that is a really important dynamic of the Wharton community, that doesn't get, quelled easily, and we can take our voices up to administration and have them represented, whether by our classmates. So if you feel compelled, if you're at Wharton, you feel compelled to represent your classmates in that way, but also to find those administrators who are always trying to be a conduit for students to other administration.
Well, from all of your comments, it sounds like belongingness is indeed a team sport where we all have a role to play in making sure in our own sense of belongingness, but also in the belongingness of our fellow community members. So I am interested in understanding how you experience the culture of Wharton. So tell me a bit about the culture of Wharton. And how it contributed to that sense of belongingness that you developed on campus.
Sure. So when I think about the culture of Wharton, the first thing that comes to mind is collaborative. I guess I had a mental image of Wharton and the recruiting visits and all the events that we were speaking about really dispelled a lot of those rumors, and realized how collaborative and engaging this school is. So that really helped me get up to speed academically, socially, and just assimilating into the greater Wharton environment. And I think about culture and collaboration, how does that kind of parlay itself? And some things that stand out in my mind is we have these programs called the Global Immersion Program, and I participated in two of them while I was at Wharton. The first one taking us to South Africa, and the second one taking us to India. So it's with a group of my classmates, both in first and second years, all different backgrounds, all coming together to better understand this region's, social, economic, political challenges, and foster ideas to how to improve, and then go into that country and meet the people who can actually make those decisions, whether it's from the business side or from politics. And for me, that's gonna really dawn on me, how global, how collaborative, and just how inclusive this school is. To be in the middle of India with your classmates, and just enjoying that experience. And I think it's something that will take with me forever. And I think that really speaks, volumes for the collaborative nature of Wharton, the belongingness of Wharton, to even, which I didn't mention, it's each of those, South Africa trip and India, there was someone from that country who led that leg of the trip for us in that country. So they hosted us, we met their family, it was unbelievable. But that wouldn't have happened if there wasn't that sense of collaboration, there wasn't that sense of belonging, something for them to really open their doors for us.
Yes, I'll add to what Marcus mentioned, and also talk to the fact that Wharton is student-led. It's a huge focus on student-led. So a lot of the people that usually you see at Wharton, and you hear this messaging starting from preterm, where you're empowered to kind of be a part of what your experience will be. So a lot of students are really excited to share their perspectives, share their background, where they're from. So a lot of people actually do lead treks, similar to what Marcus had mentioned. Even for some of the GIP sessions that I was part of, we also had some students that led that. So I got a chance to go to the Middle East. So I did, apart from Lebanon, which I did with the MENA Club, I was able to go to Israel, Jordan, and Dubai, which was phenomenal. I also got a chance to participate in the INSEAD exchange program, where I got to travel with people in Europe. So it was really, really phenomenal. And I think that student-led effort, when you think about Wharton and the clubs, is the fact that people do feel that if they want the most of their Wharton experience, they have to be a part of it. And that messaging actually cascades even from preterm. And so many people are really eager to continue the momentum on some of the conferences that have been put together from the year before, or some of the events that have been put together, whether it's AMBA, WALASA, or WASA, some of the other clubs, they always have like really good food that they put together, really good events, even in Philly, not just internationally. And so it's really open to a lot of Wharton students to participate, and people are really excited to share.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm interested to know, how has belongingness been encouraged by faculty in an academic context?
I'll chime in on that one. So one good way, I do recall whenever we would have our conferences, specifically like the AMBA or the WASA conferences, usually a day before, there's usually an event that we would have with diverse candidates that are interested in Wharton. Usually faculty is present, and there's actually something that the admissions office tends to host. And this is really just kind of a day to really share perspectives from like a lot of students from the club. Usually we would have the president also shares perspective about what diversity means to him and really encouraging students. So admissions is usually present in a lot of the events that we do when it comes to our conferencing. So I also recall on campus, there were always lunches that you can have at faculty, and sometimes they were broken down, not just by professor, but also by topic, also by clubs. And so those would be one-on-one sessions where clubs could actually meet with faculty and talk about, some of the things that are going on at Wharton, some of the suggestions that people have, some of the concerns. And so you really feel that direct connection to faculty beyond, just an observation of what's going on around without necessarily having that ongoing engagement. And, generally this is something that's kind of like built the relationship, going forward. Like, even though as an admissions fellow on campus, I had a chance to be able to engage with a lot of people in admissions, but just having those lunches with faculty is actually kind of extending that. And it's one of the reasons why, it's really easy to kind of have a rapport, whether it's through email and and even events like this where you're like, oh yeah, definitely, I'm coming back on campus, and you can just stroll by. So faculty has actually been very, very not just present, but vocal about, being in these spaces and encouraging students to definitely connect, whether they're prospective students all the way through, being students at Wharton.
Yeah. I'll share two things, then I'll be quiet and give space to other people. The first one, from an academic perspective, is like the teachers, they will, I guess before like the first class, they will literally practice every student's name so that, at day one, that like they're able to call your name and like have the pronunciation beautiful. And I think, it's small, but I think it's very powerful to kind of set the tone for the remaining of the time in that class. So I think that's something that was that resonated with me. The second thing is a lot of your professors, like they all, like I said, I don't know how they do it, but they learn about your background from your experiences prior to business school, where you want to go. And sometimes they'll even phrase some of the questions that the class is like, considering from academic perspective to your individual, experience. In my case, they may give an analogy from my time in the military and how that can apply to this similar, business challenge. And I think that sense of belonging, where like my experiences, even though I'm not offering it up to the class, is valued and, can provide to the enrichment of the academic experience.
And that's so important. The reason for the season, is primarily academic when you're coming to business school. Of course, there are other goals that many of us have in business school, but that academic experience is sacrosanct. And to know that the faculty are just as invested in your success as you are is really important to know. So I'm interested to know, what were some of your goals for business school, and in applying, when you were applying to business school, and how were you able to accomplish them during your time at Wharton?
I can talk about that. I guess I categorize them into two types of goals, like professional goals and then social goals. So professionally, I really wanted to pivot into consulting. And so I definitely will shout out the Career Services Office, because literally, like, I think after pre-term ended, I went to their office and was like, hi, I'm Natalie. I'm a non-traditional student. I think I'm the only student in my entire class that worked at a hospital, but I want to transition into consulting. Like, how can I do that? And I think they instilled in me a lot of confidence in my approach. So with resume building, even navigating networking conversations, like OCR, on campus recruiting, is like a very intense experience for those that aren't engrossed in networking constantly. And so just navigating that whole experience, they were extremely helpful, along with AMBA and WASA, the consulting prep, where essentially second years helped our first years sort of case and get used to the casing interviews. And then the consulting club that provided like other resources. So I really just focused on trying to, I told myself I'm going here for one reason, which is to get a job. And I think I kind of double clicked and associated myself with everything that would like provide me with resources to do that. The second piece is socially. So I was very involved in undergrad in the National Society of Black Engineers. I'm a Delta, so I was a big, that sorority life was a big experience for me. And at Wharton, I was like, I just want to meet people that don't look like me and get invited to people's weddings when I leave in 2 years. So that was my goal. Still waiting on the wedding invite. Not that I wasn't popular, no, I'm just kidding. But the relationship lasted for a while. But I think with that, I did dance studio. So I want to talk about stretch experiences, because I'm not sure if you guys have heard of those, but I had never danced on stage before, and dance studio is this huge dance production. And so by second year, I was like, man, my wedding list is looking kind of grim. Like, I have to do something to really expand and meet people. And so I decided to be a choreographer with my friend Crystal. And literally I had like probably like 30 new friends from that. Because if you can imagine teaching, I won't say like twerking, it was more of like a cultural infused R&B, hip hop, soca, reggae dance to people that are not familiar, like have never sort of like wind their ways or like done any sort of like sway with the hip. And so this is getting pretty long, but I conquered my fear of, well, we didn't get on stage because it was COVID, but sort of like just really stretching and saying like, hey, like I'm going to teach something that I really love to people who have never been introduced to it. And they were just so receptive. Like everyone was so excited about the dance. So I guess getting back to your question about the two goals, the first is professional. You're going to get that done. You're going to business school. It's going to happen. But I think socially, it's really important to determine like where you want to stretch. Like you shouldn't be the same person you are leaving with the same set of experiences you had coming in as you do when you leave Wharton. Like one, Wharton won't allow it just because of the nature of the program, but two, just like really align yourself with people that will force you to see differently, experience different things. And I think just like do things like you wouldn't even imagine in your wild dreams. Like Wharton is the time and the place to do that. Sorry, that was long-winded, Quentin, but I just wanted to share those two bits.
No, that's wonderful. It's so important to get that full experience, not just the academic, but the social component and being able to actualize those goals. And as you said, have those stretch experiences that challenge you to be a better version of yourself and go a little bit further and meet new people and stretch with them. That's an important experience. So did anybody else want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I could chime in just a little bit. I'll keep it short. So obviously at Wharton, I wanted to make a career transition. So I actually switched from banking to gaming. When people hear this, they're like, how was that even possible? So I worked at Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, and EY, and now I work at a gaming industry, and it's like night and day. So pretty much switch function, location, and industry. So that was actually really important. And I think that, being able to, I worked a lot with like the Career Center as well. And they really helped me to really expand on what my story was. Because, when people think about a transition, there's always the question of why us? Why are you making this transition? But being able to kind of replicate some of the experiences that I have had in like prior industries and see how it translates to the new industry. And one thing that was really important, in, trying to switch to my company, because we definitely are content creators. We actually love storytelling. We like creativity and innovation. Is really around the story, and it's really around authenticity. And I think that Wharton helped me find my voice When I think about, I talked about storytellers, I talked about being able to tap beyond the surface. That was really instrumental when I wanted to kind of speak to the reason why I wanted to work in my company or the type of culture that I was looking for. And so I'm part of a rotational program. So it's really a cohort of several people. I'm actually an alumni of the program now. And some of the things that they were looking for were people that could gravitate towards leadership within the company. And so influential leadership is another piece. Wharton's very strong on that. So apart from being like student-led, there's an emphasis on the McNulty leadership programs, with GIPs, just so many things that are put in place to actually allow and empower students to be able to stretch their leadership. And so that was actually really helpful for me, just to think through what type of leader I wanted to be and what type of environment that I wanted to be. And so as I kind of continue to kind of like grow and stuff, there's a lot that I've actually gone to tap into my experience back at Wharton. So some of the events, and I'm trying not to be as long to kind of talk a little bit more about this, but some of the things that I also did was like Power Lab. And this is another thing that's very, very unique to Wharton. You don't necessarily have to take only Wharton classes. You could branch outside of Wharton. The Power Lab course is actually a UPenn course, but it really speaks to power dynamics and how you actually kind of like relate to several things. There's just a lot of intricacies that go into it, but it really speaks to how you are as a leader and how you actually relate, and you're put in circumstances that you can't control for. And so those are some of the experiences I still tap into, even when I'm thinking about engaging with leadership within my company. So I think it's safe to say that, just having that feeling of belongingness, feeling empowered to be able to be yourself and be able to expand beyond what that is has actually been very helpful. And, I definitely am very grateful to Wharton for some of those experiences. And I still continue to like push against that in my current company.
That's wonderful, Mary. And actually, within your comments, you've pre-answered my final question. But before we get to my final question, I know they say time flies when you're having fun. I can't believe it, but we're down to 15 minutes. But I don't want to leave this conversation without inviting the audience to offer a few questions to our panel. And you can do that in two ways. Either you can drop a question in the chat and we'll pick it up and ask it of our panelists, or you can raise your hand and I'll call on you and you can unmute yourself, put yourself on video if you're in a situation where you can do that, and ask your question directly to our panelists. And I don't know if we'll be able to get to all the questions today, but we're around. We're here at Wharton, and you can feel free to access us anytime, and we'll be happy to talk to you. So let's go to my final question, and then we'll get to audience questions. Oh, and when I say raise your hand, I mean raise your hand virtually. Down in the participant link, there should be an option for you to raise your virtual hand. Okay, so the final question is about your leadership style. How has belongingness and your experiences at Wharton impacted your leadership as you've re-entered the workforce?
Yeah, I'll share my perspective here. I mean, I think that Wharton is the business school in general, but Wharton specifically is the perfect sandbox to practice and develop your leadership style. Because in general, the expectation is that you will lead teams and others when you come out of school. And so I think my time at Wharton helped me to not only recognize other people's genius gifts and what they bring to the table, but also to recognize mine and to not undervalue them. And so as I enter into corporate America and I'm leading teams, you know, I'm often in a position where the people I'm leading know a lot more than me about the particular sector we're leading, or, you know, the business. And so there's a tendency to either play up the things you do know or to recoil. And so I think because I got good practice with that exercise and got muscle memory in that from Wharton, I'm able to kind of own my space and own what I know, to ask the right questions, to bring people together, to form those relationships. You know, and I found in many cases what might be a given set ask you go to talk to someone who, may know a lot more about our foundational practice, but they haven't thought about those questions, and you put them out on the table and, oh yeah, we could do that and do this, right? Connect those. So I think, that's been a big part of, allowing me to own my seat at the table, but also inviting others to use their different genius gifts to be a part of the solution as well.
And that's a powerful answer. Thank you. Let's go to some of our audience members. So how about Chuck Stern?
Hi, good evening, everyone. I just wanted to thank you very much. It was a wonderful panel, highly informative, and really lets us understand how inclusive Wharton is. I wanted to ask, either in an academic context or via the clubs, are there opportunities to work on projects that are directly applicable to the Black community, either say in economic issues that we face in the United States, or perhaps the Caribbean or Sub-Saharan Africa?
So I think I can speak to that quickly. Yes, indeed, there are opportunities. So one of the organizations that I was a part of at Wharton is the Wharton Africa Growth Partners, short called WAG. And essentially what we did was help foreign entities who were seeking opportunities in Africa do some of the legwork around due diligence, connecting with entrepreneurs, to better inform how they entered into the market. So it wasn't limited to folks from the continent. It was really open to folks who were just Africa enthusiasts. And I think it was a super impactful experience, because we got to gain from both sides, in the sense that yes, you did get a lot from the investment experience, but on the other side, you also moved the needle on making sure that funds were actually flowing to a region that you are super passionate about. That's just one example of the many opportunities that I think you can take on to work on something that's of particular interest to you.
All right, thanks for your question, Chuck. Here's a question. I'm going to remix it a little bit. This question is from David Pulliam. He asked, what are the pros and cons of the location of Wharton? So could some of you just talk about Philadelphia, the city of Philadelphia, and how you've experienced Philly when you were here?
Yeah, I'll jump in. Well, first of all, I would say I'm a proud East Coaster, but my first time living in Philadelphia was at Wharton. And I think one of the beauties about Philadelphia is typically most of your classmates, I will even venture to say over 95% of your classmates are in Philadelphia because they're going to Wharton. So I think that's definitely a powerful thing where everyone's coming together for this shared and common experience. And no one really has a network there. There's no set core group of friends. So your built-in friends are your classmates. Your built-in activities are what the greater Philadelphia area has to offer. Not to mention, I'm a huge foodie, so if you love tons of cuisine, Philadelphia is, I would say, it's definitely up there. And that comes to a lot of the chefs who go to New York City. They test out these ideas in Philadelphia, so you'll get the taste of the world right there in Philadelphia, which I thought was awesome. The con. It's city center. It's it's an older city as far as infrastructure wise. So the streets can get kind of congested because they weren't meant for these bigger trucks and cars going down the road. So, but you most likely you won't have to deal with that stress because you'll be walking to and from Wharton and to and from the student center and your classmates' residences.
Well, thank you, Marcus. And that may be a good stopping point for our conversation. I think it's a fantastic stopping point for our conversation. This has been a really helpful and interesting conversation. And at this time, I'd like to thank our wonderful panel of guests for sharing their thoughtful answers, stories, and words of encouragement with our guests. If any of you are interested in connecting with any of our panelists, you can feel free to email the MBA admissions office, and we'll follow up with you as soon as possible. But before we depart, I wanted to give all of our panelists the opportunity for some closing thoughts and some words of advice for this group of folks who are joining us this evening. So maybe we'll go in reverse alphabetical order and offer our final remarks. Is that you, Ben?
That would be me. Hey, Quentin, but before I do give my close, could you, where are most people at in their journey to B-School or Wharton on this chat? Is it prospective? Is it incoming? Is it, what does that look like? Is it a mix?
It's definitely a mix. It's a range of folks.
Got it. I just want to make sure I understood. So I would say, you know, the whole process to B-School is a large discernment process. There are a lot of things to think about. There are a lot of things that, you know, probably aren't worth a ton of time to think about. And there are a lot of things that are really worth investing in and figuring out and asking questions. And I think that whole exploration process is really the essence of business school. I think it's really the essence of owning the spaces you walk into. And I think, you know, when you think about where you want to go to school, you have to think about, will it challenge you? You know, do you feel welcomed, but do you also feel like you're going to have to work hard to grow yourself to be there? Will you find your connection point? And I always lean back on the fact that, you know, you're not much you are a student. So about the place that you go and how it will help enrich you, but also how you will give back to it, not only while you're there, but also when you're in that alumni status. So think about that as you journey towards school and as you discern where it is you want to go and how you want to use your time and talent and energy.
I completely echo those sentiments. I think one thing that was very helpful for me was looking at the journey as beyond the 2 years in business school, right? So to Ben's point, it's really an exercise of saying, what community do you want to be a part of beyond your time in school? And when I asked myself that question, it was a no-brainer that I wanted to be at Wharton, just given the experiences that I had connecting with folks, which leads me to my second point around being intentional about test driving to some extent, just getting an experience of what it might feel like being in that community. So beyond what you see on websites, it's really important that you are intentional about connecting with current students and getting a sense of the energy that you get, because at the end of the day, beyond whatever aspirations you have for business school, the cohort that you are going to be a part of is going to greatly shape the experience that you have in your time there. And what I've seen is that the more sense of belonging you feel, the better you can thrive and really bring your best self. And so, yes, I think it's really important to make sure that you over-index on connecting with folks and getting a true feel before deciding where you want to be.
Yes, all great advice. I would just add to it from a tactical perspective, save your money, start saving it now. Because business school not only is an investment when you're taking time off from work, it's truly where you can play. And what I mean by that is we talked about traveling, we talked about joining clubs, all of these things cost money. And in addition to the application process and the GMAT, the second piece would be to invest in things that will serve you long-term. So if that's a GMAT course, if that's find books from somebody to help you score higher on the test to best position you to get the spot that you want, do that as well. And the third thing is to really reflect and just figure out not only what type of experience you want to have, where you want to be in 5 to 10 years, and how much of your B-School community you want to have a part of those experiences post-business school. Because I think that will also drive where you apply to school, the type of vibe that you get from the people when you visit. And then you layer in all the academic and professional perks. And then I think you'll be more confident in your, decision to pursue business school, and then knowing that you're at the right place. Hopefully all of you end up at Wharton, but ultimately use your resources so you can find out as much as you can to make that decision.
All right, yeah, I think it's me. So offer two advices. The first one in regards to applying. as a missions fellow, even through the AMBA, read tons of essays. And I would say the first thing is definitely take time to reflect on who you are, what do you value, and how does that, intertwine with Wharton. I think that will really help you stand out. And in person, you may laugh, answer the question, if the question asks you X, make sure you answer X, don't go off on your own tangents and just tell the story that you want to tell, answer the question. And in terms of, if you get into Wharton, which I hope you all do, what I like to say is lean in, make great use of this unique 2-year opportunity to further your career, further your network, to figure out who you are. All the resources are made to bear at Wharton. And the last part is that, continue paying it forward. We all got to where we're at because of the community who helped us. So I think it's our job to also continue paying it forward for the next year.
Sorry, didn't realize I was on mute. I'll echo a lot of the sentiments that were mentioned and a couple of things. So I'll just break it down to 3 things. One is more around introspection. There's a lot that goes into the application process. You have to think about what you want. You have to think about yourself. You have to think about who you want to be. There's the pre and the post business school. I will reiterate and I will actually stress that exercise doesn't change after you get to business school. You go through that exercise even while in business school as you think through your career. So it's not a wasted effort. So all the work that you put into that is actually really intended for you and to inform, your progress along the way. So that's actually extremely helpful. So that's one piece. And then also another piece, because I talk to a lot of prospective students, don't self-select yourself out of the process. There are people that they feel like it's a little bit overwhelming and then they're thinking, what, is this for me? I'm actually going to get in. They start doubting because there's a lot that go into it. I will say definitely go for it, shoot your shot, right? And I think that sometimes when you actually go beyond the layer, a lot of people are usually afraid to hear no or some form of rejection. But I think sometimes there's a question of what if you hear yes? If you had nothing in the first place, what do you have to lose, right? You only have the opportunity to get into your dream school, so go for it. And so I think that's one of the, and then the other thing is obviously, if you've already started the process, if you're vested, definitely finish what you started. I recognize that, while you're kind of working and trying to think about business school at the same time, or you kind of have it in whether it's your short term within the year or, a year from now, there's just so much that goes around and in your mind and even with your peers, and you start thinking, is this really for me? Do I really need to kind of go to business school, or it's just so much I can kind of hold off? But I feel that there's just a lot in that experience and that process that really shapes you. And if you're definitely sure that business school is for you, definitely just finish it, go for it. And so I think those are some of the 3 things that I have actually echoed, prospective students talk about. And I just want to specify that, yes, it's definitely worth it. Go through the exercise and finish what you started.
Well, thank you, Magali, Marianne, Marcus, John, and Ben. To all of the audience members, please stay in touch with us on social media and join us for more of our summer programming that you can find on our website. We've got some great programs coming up soon, including application tips, coffee chats with students, virtual tours, specialty visit days, and much, much more. So thanks again for coming out to join us. Have a great evening.